This video is going to show you how to replace the CV axle, drive shaft, whatever you want to call it, on the E46 BMW. I've got a 330xi here. Last weekend I replaced the passenger side. This weekend I'm going to do the driver's side. Figured I'd show you guys how to do it. So I'm going to get started.
Alright, so before we start, I wanted to show some tools you might need. Some things you might not have are a breaker bar, a seal puller, and axle pusher. You can see those over on the right side. Also, I got a torque wrench there, and a 36mm 12-point socket.
Something else that's going to make the job a lot easier is some penetrating oil. I'm using liquid wrench here, it doesn't matter really what kind, and some multi-purpose grease. This will help for getting the axle back on. Alright, so I've got the wheel off, I've got some lights set up now so I can see in there. You can see there's cardboard down here. I like to put the cardboard down. I'm working in my garage and there's a lot of dirt and stuff that falls down. Now to show you the problem here of how you know you need to replace these joints, you can see two problems. This one's torn. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, so you see the outer boot is ripped in half. And then if you look at the inner boot, it looks fine, but you see the clamp that's supposed to be on here, it's missing. So there's a lot of dirt in there from that being opened up. The usual symptoms of this, you'll hear some clicking, you might hear some rumbling when you go to brake or taking a slow right turn or left turn. So we're going to replace this. A lot of people will try to repack the grease, but I don't really see any point in it. They're like 50 to 75 bucks for an axle, and most of the work here is, pulling this thing out anyway, so I just go ahead and replace it. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do in order to replace this axle is remove this axle nut. If you look in there, it's indented a little bit on the edge here. That is because this thing is chiseled in to these little grooves so that it won't move out. This gets really locked on there, and you're going to need a breaker bar or something to get it off. I like to put a lot of Lucinol, liquid wrench kind of thing around it, let it soak, do it again until the thing breaks. Make sure to do that before you take the brakes off though, because otherwise you're just going to spin the rotor and you won't ever be able to get it off. I'm probably going to get somebody to sit inside the car, hold the brakes while I try to knock this loose. But first thing we're going to do, we're going to take a screwdriver or a chisel, something like that, to knock out these indents. Yeah, you see this? It's kind of broken. Part of it, that's fine. We don't really care. We just wanted to get out of the way of that groove so that we can pull the nut off. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is put some Lucinol on it. We're going to wait a little bit for this to kind of soak in and get our breaker bar to take it off. Alright, so I got my breaker bar with the 36mm 12-point socket. I'm going to try to break this axle nut off. It helps to have someone in the car holding down the brakes. You might have to do this a few times. Let's put some more anti-seize on it, try to break it again.
Damn, son.
Alright, so now that we've got the axle nut off, we could start taking off some other stuff. Next I'm going to take off the brake caliper. You take off the anti-rattle clip that holds this side on. Then you take off the two caliper bolts and caliper bracket bolts. Before we do that though, just to get it soaking, I'm going to put some Lucinol around the axle here. These splines can get stuck a little bit. And the way I like to do this, I like to take the strut off and drop the whole hub off of the strut so we can get to that. So see here, this axle nut, or not axle nut, but there's this one bolt here that holds the strut on. We're going to remove that. That's hard to get off, so we're going to hit this with some anti-seize, let that soak, and then try to get that bolt off too. Alright, so first thing first, get the caliper off, and then also remember, don't just let it hang. We're going to hang it up here on top of the springs. Alright. To loosen the caliper, we have a 7mm hex Allen wrench. And break it. I'm going to take the brake pads out. It's a good time now to check your brake pads and your rotor. This is the anti-lock brake sensor. It's kind of hard to see. It's back here in front of the outer boot, and if I bring it back, it's right behind the rotor, right there. Okay, we're going to pull that off. That is 5mm Allen wrench or hex key to get that off. So I took the anti-lock brake sensor out. That was connected through a little bracket here, like the wires run through. And I ended up tying that off up here. There, we don't want to mess that up while we're doing stuff. There's a couple other wires. I think the brake line goes through. It's back there. This bracket is on the back of the strut, and it's connected with this bolt here. This is what we're going to remove. This is how we're going to get the CV joint out, is by removing this bolt and dropping the hub out of the strut. Get stuck, there's another video out there where they're talking about not breaking it off. So I'm hitting it with a bunch of anti-seize. I kind of hammer it in to get it loose a little bit, and then work it with the ratchet. Alright, it's coming loose. Now before we take this bolt out completely, what we're going to want to do is get something under here to hold the hub up. I'm going to put the jack right under the ball joint. I'm not going to actually jack it up or anything, but I'm going to have it there ready, just underneath it, so that when we fall out of the strut bracket, it won't just kind of slam down too far. So if you notice, that fell down just a little bit. Now I can move the bracket back here, disconnect the wires from it, and put them out of the way, get this out of the way. You can see here how rusty that bolt is, so we'll hit that with some anti-seize, leave it off to the side before we put it back on. Now we're going to push the axle out of the hub. Alright, so what I have here, it's a hub pusher tool. It'll fit right there. You can put it on with some lug nuts, and then we're going to use it to pop this out. Now usually there's a bolt here that you ratchet on to push this thing out. When I went to AutoZone, which I just rented this from AutoZone, you can rent these for free. Unfortunately, they did not have the nut here that I needed, so this is actually part of a slide hammer. I'm going to use it to just take this crank here and push the hub out through that. you guys can't see it, but I can see it's pushing the axle out and back the hub. So I just took the rubber mallet and hit the tie rod in. I had to move the hub out that way, and that was able to drop the strut. Now I should be able to move this enough to get the joint out of the hub. Yeah, now we're out of the hub. Alright, now it should be pretty easy to get the joint out. There's a pry bar. That's out. Yep. Alright, so the next step is to get this old CV axle out of the differential. Alright, so it is kind of hard to get the axle out of the differential case. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use a pry bar, and there's like a plastic box that it connects to. It should have like a little ledge on it. I'm going to use a pry bar and a hammer and try to get it loose a little bit. What I noticed on the other side, the only thing that really got it out in the end was a flathead screwdriver, just putting it up in between the box and the differential case and just kind of prying it out. So right now I don't have enough room to even do that, so I'm going to try to bang it out a little bit to get a little crack in there, and then I'm going to pry it. We've got a couple of different pry bars. There's not a lot of room, so it's going to be hard to use a big one. But yeah, however you can get it out of there. Alright, so I'm going to go to the car, try to pry it open. Alright, so if you look under here, we now have the old axle out, and you can see back there where it goes in. Actually came out pretty easy on this side. I had a real problem getting out on the other side, but maybe it was just easier to get leverage over here. I knew what I was doing. Alright, so what we have here is a seal puller. We're going to use that to hook into the seal and pry it out. Cost about $7 at AutoZone. A guy on the E46 Fanatics forum helped me find out I needed to get this. I was afraid I was going to tear something up inside trying to pry it out with a screwdriver. You could use a screwdriver. This helps. You know, working on your car, you save so much money, it's a good excuse to buy new tools. So, here we go. And that's that. Okay, I just wanted to show some of the parts that we're going to use here. So actually on the top, I've got the old axles, both the passenger side and the driver's side. Just thought you guys like to see the difference, so I saved it from last weekend. The driver's side is a lot shorter than the passenger side. That's because the differential box is on that side of the car. So it is a little bit difficult to get the right side in, just because you have a lot longer way to guide the pole. You can see the new one here. I used AC Cardone. Can't say they're better or worse than the other ones. They work for me. They come with a new axle nut, and they come with a retaining clip, so you don't need to buy either one of those. Something else, I've got these Victor Ryan differential seals. I'll show you that. If you look on some of the forums, you'll see ones with a little red clip in the middle that makes it easier to hit the thing in. They don't have that anymore, so I talked to the guys at FCP. They said this would work, they just don't have the red clip anymore. For me, it went in really easy. I just kind of banged it a little bit on each side and just popped right in. These also come with a retaining clip for the axle.
But you can use the old one or the one that came with the new axle. It doesn't really matter.
Alright, so I'm going to put the new seal in. This fits right in. Get something to lightly tap it. Alright, now that the seal's in, I'm going to take this other jack stand that I had sitting aside and a piece of 1x4 like I was talking about earlier. Set it up just about like that. It'll give us a nice smooth plane to fit the new axle on. Before we do that, we need to prepare the axle. Alright, so we got here's the new axle. It's got the axle nut on it. It comes with one, so like I said, don't buy a new one if you're getting these. It also comes with a little retaining clip. If you want to see what one looks like pulled out, it looks kind of like this. I bent mine with pliers in the previous side. Just kind of clamp it down so that it fits around this ring here. You can see the new one, and it looks like it's pretty snug on there, so I might leave this on and try to get it. If it doesn't work, you can pry it out with a precision screwdriver, pop it off, and try bending it into shape into like a tighter ring. Because the more it pushes out, the more you want to force it in. What we're going to do is I'm going to put all-purpose grease like this, rub that around the splines. We'll do that later for this side as well. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start sliding the new axle in. I've got it greased up. The ring is nice and snug on there. A lot of people are going to tell you this is the hardest part of the job. It probably is. It was definitely on the other side, maybe because it was longer, a longer axle shaft. What we're going to do is we're going to slide it in till we find some splines. It'll kind of push in and it'll stop going once it hits that clip. At that point you can start beating it here with a rubber mallet. Or you can get a pry bar, a screwdriver or something, and start hitting this ledge here. I had a lot of problems hitting this ledge on the other side just because it's a very small lip. I think some of the other manufacturers have a nicer groove here where you can knock it in. AC Cardone does not. So what worked for me in the end was just hitting this with a dead blow hammer. One thing to note, I had to take this in and out 5 or 6 times to get the ring right, to re-grease it, fit it in the groove, so you might have to do that. But if you work with it, at some point you're going to feel it push in, and then you can just knock it in the rest of the way. It should go in pretty easy after that. Alright, so on this side you find the splines pretty much immediately. Alright, I think I feel it going in now. So you can feel behind it to let you know if it's in or not. You shouldn't be able to put any fingers between your axle and that seal. Alright, it's now flush with the back of the differential. Alright, now next step is we're going to have to push the splines of the axle back into the hub. So we're going to put some axle grease on there and get that back in. Once we have that in, we'll reconnect the strut, start plugging everything else back in. Once you get the splines in the hub, you need to put the strut back into the top of the strut bracket. There's a little pin on the back of it that'll help guide it into place. There's a groove in the back of the bracket that pin fits in. The sway bar and the springs are going to pull this thing out to the other direction, so you need to pull it back into place like that. And then what I do is jack up the hub with my jack that'll just push it back into place. It should lock pretty much in place by itself, and then we'll put the wiring bracket and that screw back through. Alright, we're going to put the wiring bracket back on. You can tell which way it goes because it's curved. Now if that's in, we can put the bracket on for the caliper. To get the brake pads back in the caliper, I use a big C-clamp to push in the piston. Do that now. Alright, so now the brake's in place, and what we're going to do now is put the axle nut on. And to finish putting this on, we're going to get somebody to hold the brakes. I'm going to get a torque wrench, and we're going to deadlift this thing up past the 250-pound torque range. Hit the brake. So the next thing we're going to do, now that the axle nut is torqued on, is we're going to chisel in the little indentations here to lock it into place. I'm just going to use a screwdriver and a pry bar to slam it in. If you have a chisel, that's best, but I don't have one, so you know, make do. Alright, now that we got this chiseled in, it's time to reconnect some wires like the analog brake system, brake pad, wear sensor. After that, we should be done. Then we'll just put the wheel back on. Alright, so now we're pretty much done. We got the wheel back on. I'm going to take it for a test drive. I recommend doing some like donuts in a parking lot, slam the brakes, you know, make sure everything's seated correctly. The first time I did this, I had a problem with the automatic transmission light coming on. I read some forums. They said just, you know, park the car, wait a little while, and turn it back on, see if it clears the code. And that seemed to work for me. I'm thinking maybe something was shifting around during the process. They got back into place. You hear the same with the brakes. They'll take a little bit to get back in place. They'll start rumbling. The driver's side was a lot easier for me than the passenger side. I don't know if that was because it's shorter distance or just from learning on the other side. It's definitely a lot easier when you can just push the splines right in rather than guide it through the hole. But all in all, it was a pretty easy job on this side. Anyway guys, hope this helped you. Be sure to leave some comments, ask questions if you want. But hey, good luck. Thanks for watching.